Hello and welcome to helpyourmath.com. In this video, we are going to look at converting between decimals, fractions, and percentages, the slightly high maintenance conversions. If you need to go back and get more detail on converting between the three, please watch the previous video on the more standard conversions, as I will go briefly into detail but not as much as the previous video. All right, let's get started. First, we're given this gorgeous decimal, mathematically read, that's 6 thousandths, because the 6 is in the thousandths position, to its equivalent percent and fraction. To convert a decimal to a percent, we multiply by 100%, or we move the decimal point 2 places to the right. Okay, so we're going to write the fraction, 0.006 times 100%. So we're starting at that decimal point, we're going once, twice. Oh no, 6 is still in a decimal position, and that's okay. That's what the math says. 6 thousandths is the equivalent of 0.6%. So not even 1%, less than 1% is what that would indicate. And that makes sense because the percent relates to the hundredths place. And if we look at the hundredths place, there's a 0 there. So it makes sense that we don't even have a percent because of that 0 in the hundredths place. Decimal to fraction, we're going to read it mathematically. So that's 6 thousandths. We're going to write it mathematically, 6 out of 1,000. And then we're going to simplify the fraction. 6 and 1,000 have a common factor of 2. I'm going to divide them both by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. 1,000 divided by 2 is 500. And that would be it. 6 thousandths is the equivalent of 3 500ths. Here we're given 33 1/3%. So we're given the percent, and we want to rewrite it as its equivalent fraction and decimal. For the decimal, we will have to round, and we're going to round to the nearest hundredth. Let's start by converting the percent to a fraction. We divide by 100%, or we put the percent over 100. Now, we can't do the second option here. We can't put it over 100% because that creates what's called a complex fraction, and we don't want to deal with complex fractions. They are complex enough. What we're going to have to do here, let's see, 33 1/3%. I suggest rewriting this as its equivalent improper fraction. To convert the mixed number to its equivalent improper fraction, we take the denominator 3, we multiply it by the whole part 33. 3 times 33 is 99, and then we add on that numerator, and we get 100 over 3. Okay, so 33 1/3% is the equivalent of 100/3%. Now that we have an improper fraction, now I can divide by 100. I'm going to take that 100 over 3% divided by 100%. And then I can rewrite division. Wait, I don't like that, right? We're going to put it over 1. Because if I have one fraction and I'm multiplying or dividing, or even adding or subtracting, I usually want a second fraction. And then there's an equivalence here. I can take any division and rewrite it as multiplication by multiplying by the reciprocal of the divisor. So I can rewrite this as multiplication. I keep the 100/3 alone, percent, excuse me. I can rewrite it as multiplication, and I do the reciprocal. That's where we switch the values of the numerator and denominator. Okay, and now I'm ready to clean this thing up and be done with this part of the question. First, I see the percents will cancel. Then, oh look, the hundreds cancel. And then in the numerator, so now the numerator's all ones, unlike in the previous video where when the denominators were ones, I could just ignore the denominators. If the numerator's only ones, we still have to put a 1 in the numerator. It doesn't work the same way. 1 times 1 is 1 in the numerator. In the denominator, 3 times 1 is 3. And there we have it. 33 1/3% is the equivalent of 1/3. And you might be saying, gosh, I already knew that. I didn't have to go through all that work. That's awesome, because this is a really common percent. Fabulous. This is just in case we don't come across one that's as common as 33 1/3, since it is a third. But these are the steps we would take. Of course, if you already know how to do the conversion, if you just happen to know it in your head, you don't have to go through all these steps when they're well known. But what if it was 23 1/7%, it would get a little bit sloppier than this. So that's why I'm showing the steps, even though you might be familiar with 33 1/3% already. And my other point, sorry, I know I just clicked on the second one, but my other point is you might be saying, well, couldn't we just get rid of the 33 because the thirds match? Yeah, this is a special one, right? 33 and a third, very special. It's the only percentage that's going to be equivalent to a third. So anything else, if we had 32 and a third percent, it's not going to be equivalent to a third. Okay, so for this last part, percent to decimal, yes, we can divide by 100% or move the decimal point 2 places to the left. What we really need is we need to know what 1/3 is equivalent to as a decimal, because that's going to be really important for us when we're converting. We can't convert a fraction to a decimal by just moving a decimal point because fractions don't have decimal points. We use the fraction instead. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the 33 and a third percent and I'm just going to rewrite that 1/3 as almost an approximated decimal. I'm using the squiggly equal sign on purpose because I know that 1/3 is a repeating decimal. So I know whatever I come up with here, it's not going to be precise because I can't possibly write the infinite amount of 3s it would take to write this. Okay, so I'm going to look at just the fraction, the 1/3, and I'm going to look at it as a decimal. That would be 3 outside the house, inside that division bar, put a couple zeros there, bring up the decimal point, and then we can start dividing. 3 goes into 1 0 times, 3 goes into 10 3 times, that will be a 9. 10 minus 9 is 1, bring down a 0. 3 goes into 10 3 times, 3 times 3 is 9. 10 minus 9 is 1, bring down a 0. I think I'm up to the 0. 0, no, this one. Stand by that one. Oh, 3 goes into 10 3 times. 3 times 3 is 9. I have 1 left over. You can see this is just an infinite loop, right? I'm going to keep having a 1 left over. That turns into a 10. Then I'm going to subtract 9. I'm going to have a 1. And then my decimal will just continue to be a bunch of 3s. So we could say that 33 and a third is like 33.333%. Okay, now I can work with this decimal. Even though it's an approximation, I have enough information that I could still have a somewhat accurate decimal equivalent. We move the decimal 2 places to the left, 1, 2, and it says round to the nearest hundredth, so let's just see what this says. This would be 0.33333. Once we convert to its decimal, we drop the percent sign, and then the hundredth, so this 3 is in the hundredth spot, and the 3 in the thousandth spot tells the 3 in the hundredth, woo, that's a tongue twister, tells the 3 in the hundredth spot to sit tight. So our best approximation of a decimal is 0.33. So that one's going to be the least precise of the 3, but it's probably good enough. Last up, we're going to convert this gorgeous fraction 9/7 to its equivalent decimal and percent. We're going to round the decimal to the nearest thousandth, round the percent to the nearest tenth. To convert a fraction to a decimal, we're going to set up the long division. And as always, if you are allowed to use a calculator, you can just type this in your calculator, 9 divided by 7. I'll do longhand just so we can see that. 9 is under this thing, 7 turns into the divisor, the denominator goes outside, the numerator goes inside. It wants me to round the decimal to the nearest thousandth, so that indicates to me there's tenths, hundredths, thousandths. I'm going to need this one because that's the decision maker of what we do in the thousandths position. I'll bring up my decimal point and let's start dividing. 7 goes into 9 1 time. 9 minus 7 is 2. Bring down a 0. 7 goes into 20 2 times. 2 times 7 is 14. 20 minus 14 is 6. Bring down a 0. 7 goes into 68 times. That would be 56. 60 minus 56 is 40. Bring down a 0. 7 goes into 45 times. Minus 35. And we have a 5 left over. Bring down a 0. 7 goes into 57 times. And we don't have to finish this step. We just needed to know that that place was going to be a 7. So now, let's see, the equivalent decimal would be 1.28. And then the 7 tells the 5 to bump up 1. This particular decimal is going to be closer to 1.286 than it is to 1.285. So it bumps the 5 up to a 6. And that would be my approximated decimal equivalence of 9/7. For the percent, we have two things we can do. We can just take the decimal that we calculated right above and use that, or we can do the actual what we're supposed to do, which is multiply by 100%. I'll stick to just doing what this particular piece of the puzzle says in case we didn't have to do the decimal already. We have this 9/7, and we're going to multiply by 100% over 1. Usually I like to simplify before I multiply. Unfortunately for me, I can't. 107 only have a common factor of 1. Multiplying straight across, 9 times 100 is 900%. Over 1 times 7 is 7. This is really awkward. I would probably convert this to its equivalent mixed number, or you can do the decimal approximation. To convert to a mixed number, we could set up the division. So I take 7, put it, oh gross, that is a gross 7. Let's try again. We take the 7, put it outside the division thing, put 900 in, and we're just going to see what the remainder is after this. So 7 goes into 9 one time, minus 7, we get 2. Bring down the 2. This is very familiar. Oh yeah, we already did this. 7 goes into 20 twice. It's a good way to check my work. 20 minus 14 is 6. Bring down the 0. 7 goes into 68 times, minus 56, and we have a remainder of 4. So what we would do is we take the whole part, 7 goes into 900, 128 whole times. Then we take the remainder of 4 and write it as a fraction over the divisor 7. 9/7 is equivalent to 128 and 4/7%, or you could also say 128.6%. I do say to round to the nearest tenth. I'm a little bit inconsistent here. I would keep it as a fraction. I like fractions better because they are more precise, but also saying 128.6% is probably good enough. So either one of those should do. These have been converting between decimal, percent, and fractions, the awkward version. Thank you for stopping by.